And I would like to thank everybody who made this possible. Here we have the board of directors, right? I've been in communication with Yuri and other folks. Thank you to I know it took a huge team to put this wonderful event together. The presentations have been fabulous that I've seen. So I just want to thank everybody for having me along for the ride. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to try to keep this to about 40 minutes and then leave time for Q&A. But I first sort of want to zoom out quite a bit to think about bilingualism, okay? Because bilingualism does matter. So how many people are there on the planet? How many human beings are there? Type in your back of the envelope guess there. And then Kinjin, can you tell me the first three guesses people have?
My guess. Okay. 7 billion, 8 billion, and 10 billion. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I looked at the population meter that I can see online, and this is the number that it told me not too long ago. So we're close to 8 billion. Let's go ahead and round up and say that there's 8 billion people running around on the planet. Okay. What percent of these 8 billion human beings do you think are bilingual or maybe even multilingual? Again, Kinjin, can you tell us the first three guesses?
70, 10, 5.
Wow. So I often see a range that big in people's guesses. And I think part of the reason is that we don't know. The answer is we don't know really what percent of the planet is bilingual, but people like Francois Grosjean and others estimated between 50 and 70% of the planet. So let's be conservative. We're going to say 60. Okay, we're going to say 60% of the planet is bilingual. Okay, what about the United States? Do you think the United States is 0 to 25% bilingual? Go ahead and raise your hand. Put your little hand up if you think it's 0 to 25% of the United States. And I'm looking through. Okay, I'm seeing some hands. Am I? Yes. Okay. Okay. Hands down. How many of you think that the United States population is 26 to 50% bilingual? Who thinks that we are 1/4 to 1/2 of the people here in this country are bilingual? Looking for, okay, I see a couple hands. Very good. All right, hands down. How many of you think, okay, come on, the United States has to be like the rest of the world. We got to be like 51 to 75%, somewhere in there. The United States must be somewhere in there. Anybody raising their hands? I'm looking. Yeah, I see. Okay, a couple hands. And then hands down. Is there anybody delusional enough to think that we are 76 to 100%? No, we are not. So friends, once again, the answer is we don't know. Okay. What we do have is the American, we have the census. Okay. Pretty soon I'll have the 2020 data, but right now I just have the American Community Survey data. And what it says, what it asks people, does not really get at our nation's bilingualism, because, for example, in 14A, if you say that you do not speak a language other than English at home, this doesn't mean that you do not speak a language other than English. You just might not speak it at the home, right? And then question C, which attempts to get at how well a person knows English. Again, you might not know English at all, and yet you still may be bilingual because maybe you know, I don't know, Cantonese and German. Okay, so this is the best we got. And drum roll, please. The correct answer is 21 points. So that's pretty low. So if you raised your hand from 0 to 25% of the United States being bilingual, you are probably correct. Okay, but we are not happy that you are correct. We are not going to applaud that you are correct. At least I'm not, because I think this is pretty sad. I think this is quite low. And if we think about it, right, the rest of the world here you see on the right, 60% of everybody's getting around on a bicycle, as it were, right? 2 languages, as if each wheel were a language. And only 40% have 1 language. And look at us, we're like exactly the opposite, and to an even stronger degree. 80% of this country, we're pretty sure, it's a decent estimate, that 80% of the United States is monolingual in English, okay? And this, I think, has important ramifications for our school children, right? The fact that we are such a monolingual nation. And I would like to explore some thoughts about our nation's monolingualism, bilingualism, how we can promote greater bilingualism through the stories of 2 kids. Here's 2 kids. The one on the left is named Joaquin, right? He's a child who could speak anything, Arabic, Spanish, French. It's a child who shows up to school and their English is deemed not strong enough right, to participate in a mainstream English program, okay? And we call them ELs, or English learners, okay? And then on the right, we have my little güerito here, we have Julian, right, who is a monolingual, and his whole family as well are monolingual in English. So what happens to a kid like Joaquin who shows up to school and they are still in the process of learning English? Unfortunately, our school systems here in general in this country either sort of directly erase those languages or neglect them, okay? And through neglect, even if it's a sort of benign neglect, it's still neglect. And it's, if you don't water a plant, it's just not going to grow, okay? That's what happens to this child's beautiful Arabic, beautiful Korean, beautiful Cantonese, whatever they show up speaking, it often just goes underwater and unwatered and disappears, right? Because here's something that's true. We said 80% of the US probably is monolingual in English. Well, guess what? A lot of them like it that way. And they don't want to hear all the other languages. They get irritated when they have to press 2 to hear English. They think they shouldn't have to do this, right? You don't have to go very far to find all kinds of cases of linguistic bullying. And these can range from microaggressions, like when you get that stink eye. You ever get that stink eye? You're out in public speaking a language other than English and you get that, right? Or somebody says something to you that's, you know, we're in America, speak English, which we don't really need to unpack that here right now. But this can also range into macroaggressions, which actually sometimes constitute violence, okay? There's a website that I maintain, which I clearly do not enjoy maintaining at all, where I upload, right, these cases that make it to the news. Just for one example, you may remember that lawyer, right, who went down, I think it was 2 doors down from his law firm in Manhattan. The 2 gals working there were speaking in Spanish, and he went on this tirade, which someone filmed. Okay, all these kinds of nasty things are out there in the world. So this guy's, you know, kind of a jerk, right? Now, it is true that the United States does not have a national official language. Okay, never have, don't know if we ever will, but we do not at this time. However, 31 states do have a law that states that English is the language of official business. Okay, so you can look here and see if your state is one of them. If you're one of those turquoise states, you're what I call the cool states, because you have English plus another language as your official language. So that's kind of neat. So this leads to a kind of a linguistic culture, right? This idea that there's official English and people engage in this linguistic bullying. And this in part is what contributes to the loss of languages here in this country. It's been happening since the inception of the nation, right? So you've got somebody like this lady here on the right. Okay, let's say that she arrives from Mexico as, I don't know, let's say she's 22, okay? And she shows up to South Carolina. There she is at 22 years old in South Carolina, monolingual in Spanish, okay? She may, in fact, learn English. It's going to depend on a number of factors. I'm sure a lot of you have tried to learn a language as an adult. You know that it's not as easy as some people mistakenly might think. We also know that it's difficult to find time to study another language, especially, you know, this lady might be working 2 or 3 jobs. She might have kids she has to look after. She might need transportation. Those classes might cost money. Anyway, there's a number of reasons why this lady might not learn as much English as she might like. Okay, but then we move on and we have her daughter, who is born in South Carolina, okay? She will learn English just like any other kid born and raised in South Carolina, okay? She definitely will be an English speaker. Even if she showed up to school not knowing any, we know as an adult, she's going to converge on a native English system. Here's my question to you though. Will she speak Spanish? The chances are pretty good, especially since, you know, that was all her mother could speak, right? And if she's the first or second child, there's a very good chance she will develop strong Spanish. If she's child 3 or beyond, what often happens is those older siblings go off to school, they learn English, they come home speaking English. So now kids 3 and beyond are no longer being raised in a monolingual household the way kids 1 and 2 often are. Okay, moving on. So she has her daughter in South Carolina, born and raised there. Of course, we're not really worried about her English. Chances are good that her English is going to look like just like every other kid in South Carolina. Is she going to know Spanish, however? It is frequently the case that a girl in this situation, so she's the granddaughter of the lady who immigrated, right, is not going to have any Spanish at all, okay? If they sent her down to Mexico every summer, you know, a couple summers to hang out with her primos, if she went to a dual language school, which we heard about in the talk by Dr. Carmen Martinez Roland, right? And which I'm going to talk about here in this talk as well. If grandma lives in the house that's going to contribute to her Spanish, right? I call that the abuela factor. Abuelas are very important, right? But my point here for you is that it is very, very common for the grandchildren of immigrants to no longer speak those languages, okay? And if you have or had a close to speak to them at all. I grew up 20 minutes away from all four of my grandparents, and I just can't imagine this being the case. Anyway, so we've got this 80.
Hi, I think we have some technical issue right now. Is Dr. Potowski still with us?
I think she lost connection and dropped out of the call.
Okay.
Hopefully she'll come right back in.
Well, meanwhile, if you have any questions you want to share, you can type in the chat box. Dr. Potowski is back.
I'm back. My internet tried to chase me away, but it was not successful. Okay, should I just pick up where I left off?
Mm-hmm.
Here I go. Oops, wait a minute. You can't see my screen, can you? Give me one.
Not right now.
One moment, please. Share screen, share. Here we go. All right, we cooking with gas now?
Yes,
Here we
you
go.
can see it.
Great. So I was, I don't know where I got cut off, but what I was saying was that we get these well-intended people, right, who might tell us not to speak a language other than English in our homes. And I'll tell you what really, really irks me is when pediatricians will tell, right, parents this terrible advice. And I had a couple of PhD students tell me, yeah, I took my child into the pediatrician and they told me that I shouldn't speak Spanish at home. And I feel like, wow, you know what? You need to stay in your lane, pediatricians. Like, I don't give gastrointestinal advice to anybody, right? Are you a linguist? No. Well, how about you don't give linguistic advice, okay? Because here's what happens. They will often tell parents not to do this because they are perhaps concerned that the child won't learn English as quickly or that the child will have an accent. I probably don't have to tell all of you here that both of these things are false. There's plenty of evidence for both of those, which I'd be happy to share with you later. I think other times people are concerned that the kid will become confused, okay? Get your fingers ready. What percent of this planet did we say, of the 8 billion people running around, what percent did we say are bilingual? Kinjin, can you tell me what people are typing?
50, 60, 60,
Right.
50, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we did say that 60 was the number we were going to use. Let me ask you something. Do you think 60% of the planet is confused? You think they're all running around confused? Or is it more likely that when the majority of a population does something, 60%, okay, that's normal? I mean, that's where the word normal comes from, right? The norm, right? What that suggests to me is that it's normal for the human brain to be bilingual, okay? It's not a sign of confusion. In fact, I think people mistake for confusion the fact that their children might mix the languages. So if you're like that lady who came from Mexico, you've only ever been around monolinguals and you haven't heard code switching, which is the fancy word for this, right? You might think, oh my God, I'm ruining my child. They're never going to get into college. I've just messed them up, right? Nobody plays with their kids' lives, you know? And so if a well-intended, well-respected person in the community suggests to you that you should stop speaking your language at home, you might go ahead and believe that, okay? I think it's really important to get this word out to all parents that, you know, speak what you want. You know, don't let anybody tell you that you should stop speaking your language at home. It is not going to do anything negative to your child, just the opposite. just the opposite, right? And I like to show parents examples. My kids are now quite large, but when they were small, they did all kinds of code switching, right? And I get how like a normal mom would hear her kid say something like, yo quiero ver who that niña is, or yo quiero mi own jugo, and think, my kid's going to end up not being able to speak English or Spanish. Well, what am I doing? I better knock it off. Okay. But that's absolutely not the case. This is super common. Okay. Bilinguals are not two monolinguals joined at the neck. Okay. In the same way that a bicycle is not two unicycles, right, with some duct tape in the middle. This is not the way language works. And I think it's important for parents to have this kind of language education about language, so that they realize these things, and then they won't be given, or they won't follow any bad advice. This is another thing that's also not true. I think some parents believe that language is sort of in your brain as if they were stored in balloons, right? And if your Spanish balloon or your Korean balloon or your Greek balloon is too large, there will not be room for your English balloon to grow. And that's absolutely not how it works. We know that the languages are there together, helping each other. Okay. And we see all over the media, it makes it into popular media all the time, all the benefits of bilingualism, right? And I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. The cognitive benefits, social benefits. Bilinguals are smarter, bilinguals are sexier, bilinguals dress better, bilinguals are invited to more parties. The average age of onset of dementia is 4 years later, and sometimes as much as 10 years later. We don't really know why, but these are all benefits to bilingualism. But yet, what do we do to a kid who's got that beautiful incipient little, right? You see that little plant, that's their incipient linguistic systems, right? That they've actually got quite a bit of language at this age. We rip it out. In this country, our school system rips it out, or we just neglect it and let it wither up. Okay. I think it's also important to point out that there can be a class-based element to bilingualism as well. Don't get me wrong, I am thrilled that Princess Charlotte here was, I think, taking French lessons, and that the Daily Mirror decided that that was newsworthy. Great. I think that's a wonderful example. I think everybody should follow this example and have their children try to learn 2 languages. But I also want to point out this response from this person who said, well, so do most children of immigrants, but I guess it's less impressive when they're poor, right? Here we have the additive versus subtractive kind of bilinguals. I think it's very important to keep this in mind, okay? When we have the children of immigrants learning English and trying to retain their home languages, they should get just as much support and just as much applause as our mainstream language majority children who are adding another language on, which makes a nice transition to our friend Julian here. Typically in the United States, there are exceptions, which we will see in a moment, but typically, when does, quote, foreign or world language instruction begin in this country? It begins in high school. How old are you when you start high school? About 14. Do you think that's a good time to start languages, or does that seem a little late? It seems a little late to me, especially since we know that language learning before 8, 9, 10-ish, right? There's no like magic cutoff birthday, right? Tends to be better. And I'm going to use that with quotes. I know a lot of my second language acquisition colleagues will say, no, it's exactly the same. But I think for general, our purposes here, it is not out of the realm of truth to say the younger, the better in general. Okay. And the neurolinguists tell us when you learn a language younger, it goes to a different part of the brain. Okay. So it's like planting a seed when the soil is most fertile. Okay. But what do we do in this country? We wait till high school, and then we get this sentence right here. If I had a nickel for every time I've heard this, right? I studied 3 years of Spanish or French or whatever in high school. And how does the sentence end? It ends like this. And I don't remember anything. Wah, wah, okay. Why? Because we tried to plant a seed in the desert, so to speak. Right now, of course, there are people who start learning languages in high school or even beyond, and they do very, very well. Okay. But in general, I think we can all agree that beginning at age 14 for just 50 minutes a day, 5 times a week is really not going to get us where we want to be with languages. And if this was true for you, if you studied 3 years of Spanish in high school and you don't remember anything, please know I'm not, wagging my finger at you. I'm not saying you're a terrible language learner or that your high school Spanish teacher was terrible. What I'm saying is that the system is set up for this kind of failure. It really is. Okay. We used to be a little more robust in our offering languages to children, but then No Child Left Behind came along, and that reduced the number of programs we have. And what I was able to find, the most recent data, 19% of people in this country, right, K through 12, are studying languages. Okay. Sometimes you'll hear this statement. Okay. I don't need to learn another language because most of the world speaks English. And I thought, is that even true? What percent of the world's population does not speak any English? Kinjin, can you tell me what the first 3 guesses? Go ahead and type in your guess. What percent of the world, of those 8 billion people, don't speak English?
$75.
Wow, who said 75? That's very exact. And that's exactly what I found. I found 2 sources, and I can't swear that they're you know, super accurate. Again, these things are very hard to measure, but these 2 sources coincided that 20 to 25% of the planet's population does speak English. You know, next time you're at a barbecue and you hear this, at least you can have something to reply to these people. It's not true, right? So instead of No Child Left Behind, which decimated our language instruction, my thought is, what if no child was left monolingual? What if that was our motto, right, for our educational system, right? That no child graduates from high school as a monolingual. And that's what I titled this TEDx talk that I gave in 2013, which I noticed has 103,000 views, which I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of proud of that, because, you know, only 100,000 of those were my mom, and then 2,000 were my students. So like 1,000 people at least have seen this video. Anyway, so I have just outlined 2 problems here, okay, with language education in the United States. One is that we either neglect or we actively go after kids' heritage languages. Then they turn 14 and we're like, orale, now you can study another language, right? What about all those years in between when they could have been, right, enjoying robust literacy development and things like that? And then with our Anglophone children, we begin our language instruction in high school, which is way too late. And to be honest with you, a lot of our classes still have not gotten the memo about communicative language teaching, and they're doing a lot of grammar exercises and drill and kill and things like that, okay? There's not a lot of things in this life that have kind of a magic bullet solution, but this is very close to it. And dual language education can go a long way in solving both of these problems. So we had, you know, our talks about dual language education this morning. So most of you probably know what it is, but I'd like to, I think, just summarize what dual language is by first telling you what it's not, okay? Remember our friend Joaquin? So a kid like this, he shows up to school, the school determines, right, via a statewide assessment that his English is not strong enough for him to go to the mainstream classroom. Okay, since I think it was 1974, was it 74? Lau versus Nichols, right? This was a federal court case where the Supreme Court decided that when a kid is like Joaquin, okay, if he's in a public school that received federal money, that public school must do something to help Joaquin have access to school, to the curriculum, right? They didn't say what the schools have to do. They just said the schools have to do something. And here are the 3 somethings that typically happen. One program is not a lick of anything else is used, any other language, only English is used, but they have different kinds of sheltered instruction or ESL, English as a second language. They have a pullout. Some type of assistance is purportedly provided to these English learning children. Door number 2 is called bilingual education. You might see I have quotes around it. That's because this program is officially called transitional bilingual, okay? This is a program in which 25% of a day is taught in the non-English language. And I'm just going to say Spanish from now on, but it could be any other language, okay? But check it out. It only goes up till about 3rd grade. That's when the kid is expected to exit the program, go into the mainstream classroom. What happens to Joaquin's Spanish after he exits this bilingual program? Nobody knows. Nobody cares, okay? It's left to wither. So that's why I say there's nothing bilingual about this, except I suppose the method uses some bilingualism, right? The goal is not bilingualism. The goal is English acquisition. That's why I say, quote, bilingual. And then, of course, the awesome one is the dual immersion. Two-way immersion has several names, as you know. This is where 50 to 90% of the day is taught in the non-English language. My kids went to a school that was 80% in Spanish, but you see how it goes all the way up through 8th grade, sometimes up through high school. Okay, so this is developing a nice, robust Spanish system. And guess what? It's not just for kids like Joaquin who need to learn English, okay? It's also for kids like Julian. Julian's parents said, you know what? We don't want to wait till he's 14 and have him go to some, you know, verb drill and kill Spanish class. Like, we want this boy to learn Spanish. We sort of want to cure our family's monolingualism, right? Now, sometimes a school district will see the data that I'm about to show you, and they'll go, holy cow, dual immersion is the best. We want it in the district. And parents like Julian's parents are into it. They want to sign up. It's parents like Joaquin's parents who very frequently are very reticent. And we can understand that, right? I mean, if you're an immigrant yourself, if you are struggling or suffering in any way because of your own lack of English, right? The last thing you want is for your kid to have any issues with English. You want that kid to learn English and learn it well. And everyone agrees. I don't know anybody who doesn't agree with that. That's very, very important. But how do we get there? Okay. So sometimes I will show what I just showed you, right? These 3 programs to parents. And I will say in Spanish, right? I'll be in a room full of Mexican parents, for example, here in the Chicago area. And I'll say, a ver, ¿cuál de estos 3 programas, cuál resulta, piensen ustedes, en el nivel más alto de inglés para sus hijos? And they will almost always say, door number 1, right? Entre más inglés le hablan al niño, más inglés va a aprender el niño. And I say to them, that's very logical for you to think that the more Spanish they speak to the kid, the more English they speak to the kid, the more English the kid will learn. That's a very logical thing to say. But is it true? Is it true? We're going to look at some data from Houston. I'd like you to please look at the blue bar. The blue bar is going to be that transitional, right? The one that we said is not really bilingual, right? And then that yellow bar is going to be the 2-way bilingual immersion where 50 to 90% of the day is taught in Spanish. The red bar I didn't talk about, so don't look at the red bar. Okay, you ready? Look at 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. Which bar is higher in all 5 grades? The yellow bar. Do you see what this is saying? This is saying that kids who studied 50 to 90% of the day in Spanish are reading better in what? In English. And I know that kind of makes some people go, what? English writing, same thing, yellow bar is higher. Math and English, same thing, yellow bar is higher. So what I say to parents is, you want your kids to learn English? Me too, put them in Spanish. I know that sounds counterintuitive, right? But that's what the data show us. Sometimes the answer that is simple is not correct, right? It's a little more complex, you know, the truth. Sometimes they don't want to believe that data. I say, okay, fine, let's look at California. Here, they followed 3 groups of kids or caught up with them, right, when they were in 11th grade. And they looked at their California standardized English test scores. Here's how those English only kids did. Okay, not super well. Here's how the bilingual ed kids did. Where do you think the yellow bar is going to be for the 2-way immersion kids? Boom. This is just a no-brainer, right? I don't know why any district would not see this and go, okay, yeah, this is what we want for our kids. Even children who have different types of learning difficulties can and do well in dual immersion all the time. Because remember, what percent of the planet did we say is bilingual? We said 60. That was our conservative number, right? Well, within that 60% of bilingual human beings, right, is whatever the normal distribution is, I don't know what it is, of kids who have, right, cognitive difficulties, speech and hearing difficulties, even Down syndrome, right? Those children can and do become bilingual all the time, okay? So, you know, when I hear a parent say, oh, my daughter can't be in dual immersion because she has an IEP, she has a documented learning disability, she has this or she has that, they absolutely can and do well in these programs if they have enough support. Okay. And I'll tell these parents, look, if you don't want to believe the California data, you don't want to believe the Texas data, I don't know what to tell you, because district after district after district are finding the same thing. Portland, El Paso, North Carolina, Stanford, dual immersion is absolutely the best for the kids who need to learn English. Now, I don't have a whole lot of time, so I'll try to get through this part quickly. Why is it the case that they're doing better? Part of it could be because they're not falling behind, right? When you learn 2 más 2 son 4, right? You don't have to relearn 2 + 2 is 4 after you've learned English, okay? Because those concepts, you know, transfer over. Some kids don't fall behind at all, but you know, some kids, they just do. So that might be one of the reasons. It could be this general cognitive advantages to bilingualism we talked about earlier, right? Sort of as a rising tide that raises all boats, and that might be why these kids are doing better. A third reason is actually one of my favorite reasons, and it speaks to the importance of valuing kids and their languages, okay? So let's think about our friend Joaquin again, right? When he shows up to either an ESL situation or to a transitional bilingual classroom, okay? And P.S., my colleagues and friends who teach ESL and who teach transitional bilingual agree with what I'm about to say, okay? It's not that these teachers are bad people who put terrible ideas into Joaquin's mind. It is a system that says the following to Joaquin and kids like him. It says, you have a difficulty, you have a something holding you back, you have a barrier, you're Spanish. Oh, if you didn't have that Spanish, then you could be in that mainstream classroom with all these other kids, right? So the child, a lot of them can't help but internalize this idea that their Spanish is a hindrance, okay? Because English is the only thing that anybody cares about, okay? Now let's think about Joaquin in a dual immersion situation, right? Where 50 to 90% of the day, he's the king, he's the one who knows stuff, right? And half of the kids in the classroom are only starting to learn Spanish, so they turn to him for help, right? What did the teacher say? Help me out, right? So I think that could go a long way in does this make sense? You're positioning a child as successful, and that can go a very long way in actually leading to that child's success, okay? My final point here for us today is to think about their Spanish, right? We've got tons and tons and tons of studies about their English. Kids do well on English, kids do well in their academic areas. Not very many studies have really looked at their actual Spanish that they're developing. I think everybody would agree it's important to do that, right? Especially since we saw earlier, 53% of the grandchildren of Spanish-speaking immigrants, right? They don't speak it, and we saw that earlier with the granddaughter, right, of the lady who immigrated. So I did a study here in Chicago with Megan Marshall. We went into a school, okay, one building, and each grade had two classrooms, a dual immersion classroom and an English-only classroom, okay, like with ESL stuff. So the parents got to choose where their kids were going to go, okay? This is a typical Illinois public school in a large metropolitan area, right? You've got 80% free and reduced lunch. That's a sign of a working class, right? Neighborhood, 81% Latino, and all the children that you're going to see in this data, all of them speak Spanish at home. All of them do. All right. So I give them a Spanish listening comprehension task, and you can see this blue bar here is the English kids, right? The kids whose parents put them in English. They're doing just fine. You know, they're not doing too badly on the listening comprehension because they're listening to Spanish all the time. Of course, the dual kids did do somewhat better. Okay. And you can see those differences here. Where you see even greater differences is with reading, because these children here, yes, they're speaking Spanish at home. You know what they're not doing at home? They're not reading in Spanish at home, okay? And the dual immersion kids are reading in Spanish at school. So those differences, the reading differences are greater, right, than the listening differences. And the biggest differences we found was in the writing, y'all. The writing, let me show you some examples. Here are some kids in first grade, okay? So they've been through preschool, kindergarten, they're now in their third year of education, all in English, okay? They speak Spanish at home. You show them this drawing and you say, you know, escriban lo que está pasando aquí en este dibujo, right? So the kid on the left writes, ellos son comiendo eggs, él está haciendo eggs. And, okay, it's not, I mean, he's 6, right? That's not too bad. Look at the kid on the right. Dad making eggs, the kid helped dad. This is a child who speaks Spanish at home. This is a child who told us, sí, yo quiero participar, you know, I want to play the game. We called it a game. It's hard to prove the absence of something. It's hard for me to prove to you that this kid was completely incapable of writing things in Spanish. Like maybe if we picked him up and shook him, some Spanish would fall out of his pockets. I don't know. But this is what he did, okay? And you saw the averages. The averages were quite low on the writing quality for the kids in the English track. Look at the kids in the dual language track across the hall, okay? You got this kid over here. Los niños están limpiando y la mamá es tomando chocolate y bueno, se le fue la onda aquí al niño. El papá está cociendo huevo. So I think you would agree that both the quantity and the quality is stronger here. And look at this kid. This kid doesn't have enough lines to say everything they want to say in Spanish. Están cocinando huevos y tomando jugo y los huevos se acabaron de cocinar y cocinándoles huevos. Look at that morphosyntax. Cocinándoles huevos, right? And here you have my little analogy with the plant. This is a nice, robust plant, okay? We have watered their Spanish, so to speak. And of course, these differences just exacerbate when you're in 5th grade. You're now in your 7th year, right? If you count preschool and kindergarten, you're now in your 7th year of education, all in English. And you can see their Spanish is, they have a lot of trouble communicating in writing in Spanish, but their friends across the hall, right, do much better in the Spanish. Okay, so this is a question of bilingualism versus biliteracy. And this is what I will show parents, because they will often say to me the following: nosotros hablamos español en casa y eso es suficiente. And I say, I love that you speak Spanish at home. That's great. Please keep it up. But when you say it's sufficient, suficiente, it's sufficient for what? right? Because if you want your kid to write like this, then yeah, it's sufficient. But if you want your child to write like this in Spanish, then our data suggests that it really isn't sufficient, okay? And this will sometimes, convince the parents, okay, I see what you're saying, but what about the English? Because of course, yes, the English is very important. Well, here's what we found in our study. You'll notice it's different from what I showed you from California and Texas, where the yellow bar was way up here, remember, much higher than the blue bar. I did not find that. We found that the English was about the same, okay? But I can still look these parents in the eye and say, your kid's English will not suffer, right? Other studies show the English way up here. Our study didn't find that, but it's no worse either, okay? So you're not sacrificing your kid's English and you're adding the Spanish, okay? And the same is true for our home English speaking children. There are many fewer of them in this school, but we did test them and we found that they were doing just fine on their English plus their Spanish. Look at this kid. Mi actividad favorita es ir al parque. This is 5th grade. A mí me gusta ir al parque porque puedo correr libre en el parque. And this continues on the back, y'all. There's a lot of Spanish here, okay? So there are school districts around the United States that are clamoring for these programs. We do need to be careful, as the talk by Joe Elliott mentioned earlier, right? There can be circumstances which some have called gentrification of dual immersion programs, right? Where sort of often white, affluent parents sort of hijack the mission of the program, where it no longer becomes a Latino serving space. Okay, so we definitely have to be careful for that. And teacher preparation, I think, is also, it's probably for me, the #1 need that I see that we have around the country. We need teachers to get really rich preparation to do a good job in dual immersion, okay? Dual immersion can also help our young people earn the seal of biliteracy. I think this is an important thing for our young Latino youth, because if we imagine a graduating class of high school seniors, 2 of them go to present themselves for a job. They both say, yo soy mexicano, yo hablo español en casa, but one of them has a seal of biliteracy, she may be more likely to actually land that job, okay? And I can't overestimate the importance of what I think dual immersion can do to promote social justice. We know that 1 out of every 4 kids in this country is of Latino origin. 30% of them live in poverty. 30% begin school as English learners. And all this data that you see here really points to a rather dire systemic problem across our country, which is tied to all kinds of racist and classist issues, okay? I'm not saying dual immersion is going to solve these problems. What I am saying or suggesting is that the data show us that dual immersion is the best model that we have for these kids, and they deserve it. They deserve the best thing that we have for them. I think it could improve also our shift, our language loss, okay? It could get rid of this Homer Simpson problem that we mentioned earlier, right? About people saying, I studied in high school and I don't remember anything. And I think these people, we didn't talk about all of them. We only talked about this fellow here on the bottom right. Remember him? He was the lawyer who yelled at those ladies, right, for speaking Spanish in public. I like to think that if these people had attended dual language schools, maybe they wouldn't grow up to be such jerks, right? I mean, maybe these schools sort of inoculate people against this kind of ideology, right? So I guess what I'm advocating for here, and I think probably all of us would agree, we need truly bilingual programs. We need to start them in kindergarten, and we need them not only for the kids who show up speaking other languages other than English, but also for our monolingual English speaking kids who are second language learners. And I think this will go a long way towards pushing us out of that 80% monolingual in English, maybe having us look a little more like the rest of the world. So I think I will conclude here. Thank you very much for your attention. And I think I'll just stop sharing my screen then and see if there's any Q&A. And I guess that Kinjin, you might be fielding those questions, or I'm happy to do it either way.
I can jump in and help with monitoring the discussion right here. And
Thank
thank you, Dr. Potowski, for your presentation. And we really appreciate it.